Okay, hello, welcome to the StartupGrind-Zagreb. I'm Augustine, I'm the chapter director of StartupGrind-Zagreb, and our guest speaker today is Anita from Bodyrecog. Welcome, Anita.
Hi, Augustine. Hi, everybody.
Yeah, thank you everybody for coming today on this hot Saturday. So let's get started. Anita, you're the founder and CEO of Bodyrecog.
Bodyrecog metrics and Live Good Croatia, Live Good UK. Basically, we have three companies.
Three companies.
Yeah, I know. It sounds ridiculous. But it's like
I found it's the best way to start an interview is from the very beginning, from your childhood. So, were you an entrepreneurial child?
No, far from it. My mother, she was a stay-at-home mother in the early childhood. Later on, after my parents divorced, she was the sole breadwinner, and so she was the one who was working. And so you can say that I am a child of a single mother, and I have a brother who is younger than me. And the good thing about that situation is that all decisions that I made were my own. So I chose both the high school which I wanted to attend, I chose the university or the faculty which I wanted to attend, and my mother just went along with it. I didn't ask for permission or anything. I just said, this is what I would like to do. I said, fine, go with it. So there's a sense of independence that I think I gained, and as an older child, you're kind of always responsible for the younger one, and there was nobody to help me out doing schoolwork, but my brother, he always had me to help him with schoolwork. So I guess this is one of the traits that helps in being an entrepreneur, learning early on to be independent.
I agree. So, did you want to be an entrepreneur? Did you choose a commerce school or economy college?
That's so funny. So my high school was actually high school for linguistics, and the subsection was for economy. However, after that, and all my teachers at the high school, they thought that I would definitely go and study economy or the English language. And I said, no, I'm going to go and study molecular biology. What? Nobody expected that. But for me, molecular biology was so interesting and intriguing. I wanted to learn how does the body function on the molecular level. And I thought everything else, I could basically take a book and learn. So you can learn languages, you can learn economy, you can learn many things just by taking the book and reading it, reading a lot, listening to other people, etc. But something like molecular biology, you actually have to do. It's not enough just to read. You actually have to try different things, and you have to learn the procedures. So learning how everything works in natural sciences was, I wouldn't say challenging, because that would be a wrong term. I think it was really fun, and I really loved it. I really liked getting out of my comfort zone, because it would be the easiest thing on earth for me to go and study English language, because I went to American school as a child in Pakistan, and I went there for 6 years, and that's where I learned English, and I just continued using English from then on. So it would be the easiest thing in the world just to continue with the English language, because actually I was even correcting my own teachers in school. So in the end, I chose something that I thought was very interesting and I knew the least of. Yes.
So, how does that connect to Bodyrecog?
Well, all of a sudden, despite all my knowledge and my work experience, etc., I found myself without a job. And one of the things, I was trying to get a new job. However, there was also this sense of feeling that I really didn't want to work for somebody who was less able than me. I had the unfortunate situation that I was working for people who were my superiors in the work, and that I found to be less able than me, less motivated than me, and etc. But they were my superiors, and I tried to progress further. However, they would stop me, and eventually I chose to leave because I didn't want to waste my time there. And although afterwards it was a very difficult economical situation, I have not regretted my decision. It's just you come to a point where, do you value yourself? Do you respect yourself? Do you have self-dignity or not? And at that point, for me, it was, if I stayed in that situation, I would lose respect for myself. So despite the difficulties that I knew would come, or anticipated that might come, I chose to resign. And during that period, I was out of a job for 3 years, but I wasn't doing anything, or doing nothing, to be more precise. I actually did 8 more books, 8 biology textbooks and workbooks. So this was another set of what I did before. So before that, in 2009, I did 8 books. So it was 4 textbooks and 4 workbooks in high school biology. And so I did another set during that 3 years of being unemployed, of high school biology textbooks and workbooks. So I did do something. And I did know that I wouldn't be paid then, that I would be only paid once the ministry approves it, once it gets on the field, on the market, that people buy it actually, and then I'll get a percentage of that sales. So a very much delayed profit, but I did it because it brought me much joy, it made me feel useful, and I was always thinking long term. So in order to succeed as an entrepreneur, in my opinion, you need to think long term. If you're just going for short term successes, you won't make it. You have to think of long-term goals and long-term efforts in order to achieve something that is of substantial value. That is, in my opinion and my experience. Sometimes people think that some things have happened overnight, but actually if you speak with those people, you will actually find out that they were working on that for 7 years, a decade. They were maybe preparing it for quite a long time before that actually happened. So in my case too, the idea for Bodyrecog actually came during that time when I was thinking, what should I do? So I decided I want to become an entrepreneur, and then I was looking into all the trends and what is going on, how I can monetize my knowledge and all my work experience from thus far. And then I realized one thing. Although I am already quite experienced as an author, I know how to write non-fiction books. I mean, I'm author of 16 books. However, there's a trend that even though ebooks were being sold for a while, that they started to stagnate, and people are reading less. And the thing was that what they noticed is that the Generation X is the one who is reading those e-books, but the millennials and the even younger generation, they are reading less. So what are they doing? They're actually using more their smartphones. They're using more mobile apps. So in order to, if you're thinking long term, you have to think of what is the next trend. And so the next trend is people are learning actually through mobile applications. Such being the case, so what can I do that would make a great mobile app where I could input my knowledge and that would be useful? Since many, my interests were quite many, but among other things was nutrition. And mostly because of my personal reasons, I've been always interested in nutrition because I have always had issues with my weight due to my thyroid. I have Hashimoto, hypothyroidism, and also polycystic ovaries, which means that just by nutrition I cannot solve the issue, because the diet that works and helps the thyroid is actually contrary to the one for the ovaries, and vice versa. So finding a proper balance between the two is a challenge, and it's a challenge. Let's just stay it there. So how the human body works was always very much interesting to me, and that's why I studied molecular biology, to understand how the genetics affect you. So genetics is something that determines your body type. It determines your height, the color of your hair, the color of your eyes, and this is something that basically you can't influence that much because you have the set of genes that are there. However, how your body does look like is affected also by your environment and by your personal choices or your lifestyle choices. So one of the things that you can choose your lifestyle choices, and you can choose your environment. So the environment is, how much are you sleeping? And that's also your lifestyle choice. But are you sleeping in an area where the air is clean, where you have enough darkness for your eyes and your brain to rest during the night? Do you have, it is essential, people speak of light, but there is the amount of darkness that the body needs, there's the amount of light that the body needs in order to function properly. You also have to take into consideration the quality of air you're breathing, the quality of water you're drinking, and the amount of water you're drinking, and also, of course, the quality of food. Does the food that you're eating, does it have all the nutrients? So some of the things, depending where you live, you can or cannot influence. So what can you do? One of the things is, if you are living in an area where water is highly polluted, use filters. If you're, again, in a workplace where there's an air conditioner, etc., make sure that the air conditioner is sanitized so there are no molds spreading around and giving people respiratory problems. You can try to, as much as possible, to live in a healthy environment. And if you think that people in rural areas are living a healthier lifestyle, believe me, many times it's not the case, because they're more exposed to pesticides, different kinds, whether they're herbicides or insecticides, etc. So what has happened is that people have found that men who live in rural areas are actually having a lower sperm count because they're more exposed to pesticides. So this is something that, again, influences our health, and again influences our hormonal system and mimics female hormones, female sexual hormones, and which affects that the body is actually accumulating fat. And that's why we have nowadays quite a lot of men who are accumulating fat in a way that looks more like a woman than it would normally be. So these are some things that are just the environment. The next thing is that you can decide, and which you can absolutely influence, is what are you bringing into your body. So what are you drinking and what are you eating? And these two things people might not know or might not believe that they have a much significant impact on how our body looks like and how our body functions than one could possibly understand. So for instance, the quality of water and the quantity of water is extremely important. So the water molecules themselves, they form clusters. So it's not the same if they have a highly organized clustered structure, because if they do, that means that they have a higher vibration, higher energy, and thus they make the body function much better. A water that I know has such qualities was the old Jamnica, but it's now non-gassed, but it's not in the sales anymore, and also Studena. So these waters, once you start drinking them, you will notice, if you are just continue drinking them, that your body will become more thirsty and will ask for more and more. Why? Because it wants to replenish the entire water within the body. Because our body is working in a way, so this might sound a little bit esoterical, but you could say, let's say, that your body knows which water is good for you and wants to take that. A test has been done with animals when they have given them water that was highly clustered and highly organized. So this is something that is the science of self-organizing systems, or more popularly known, the theory of chaos. And also if you use quantum mechanics. So if you know this much, then you can understand how actually the water and the water molecules affect you and how they transfer information. So this water, when it's highly organized, it makes your DNA molecule to have the perfect position. So your DNA works perfectly. It produces all the proteins you need, so it builds your body to be the best possible. However, the water that we usually drink is not of that great quality. Another thing is that people don't drink enough water. We take sodas, we drink coffee, we drink tea, and by that I mean black tea and green tea and some other teas that have a diuretic effect. That means that they are dehydrating the body. Even juices, fruit juices, the body sees as food. So although they are in liquid form, basically for the body they are just like food. And if they have a higher level of either caffeine-like molecules like thein or caffeine, or if they have sugar, anything like that, for the body, they're just, it wants to dilute it. And because it wants to dilute it, the water within the cells goes outside the cells, and then you become dehydrated, and then of course the body eliminates that. And that is the main reason why so many people are ill nowadays, because they are actually dehydrated. They're not taking enough water into their system. So this is when it comes to water. We have to drink enough high quality water for our body's biochemistry to function at its optimum level. The next thing is food. Our food, even if you choose to eat a lot of vegetables and a lot of fruits, if they're not organic, you might be in trouble. Like I mentioned before, they might be covered a lot with pesticides, which mimic female sex hormones, so they mimic estrogen. And in that case, you start to gain weight and you wonder why. Also, animals are, in some countries it's banned, in some countries it's not, so they try to regulate it, but they're given antibiotics and they're also given hormones in order to build more, and so they're given growth hormones. And then when you're eating that kind of meat, you're also eating all those chemicals. That's why organic farming is also something that, if we can have a choice, would be very wise to take. Then you would think, okay, how about seafood? But I'm sure quite of you have heard that nowadays, especially the larger fish, they can have mercury poisoning and other heavy metal poisoning, because the larger the fish are, they have more fat, and in the fat all the toxins are accumulated. So you would say, okay, so what shall we do now? What shall we eat? That's why I said it's not so simple. So many factors affect how the body looks like and the health of our body. So it's genetics, it's the environment, and it's also our lifestyle choices. Another thing is how much you exercise affects more your health than your weight. Many people think that if they exercise more, that they're going to lose weight. That is only certain to a very, very small point. Basically, if you run for 1 hour, 4 times a week, the calorie, you will spend 10 to 30% at the most. You will burn your calories that you have brought in your body. So actually, you have to really go on calorie restriction, watch what you're eating, make sure that you have enough of highly valuable nutrients in your food, because if your food, no matter the quantity, doesn't have all the necessary nutrients your body requires, you will constantly feel hungry, you will want to eat more because you feel you are nutrient deficient, and unfortunately that is a cycle, that is a vicious cycle. You will not be able to get out of that vicious cycle. So you have to take, if you are living in a country where maybe or in a situation where you don't have high quality food, you really need to take supplements. In that case, supplements of vitamins, of minerals, and then you will see that your body will function at a better rate. So supplements are recommended in those kinds of areas. Of course, if you live in a tropical island where there's a lot of fresh food and everything is freshly made, you won't need supplements. But
yeah, for example, if you're a startup founder, we tend to eat, let's say, junk food. It's widely commented, eat ramen. Startup founders are eating ramen all the time. So that would be bad, I suppose.
But you know, it's again our personal choice. So I take for breakfast, I always try very best to take for breakfast fruit. Why fruit? Fruit gives you a lot of vitamins, some minerals. There are more minerals in vegetables, so vegetables should always be eaten at a later point. And if you eat fruit just by themselves, they quickly go in and quickly go out, and they help in a way to detoxify or to clean your digestive system in a certain way, and it actually helps you keep your energy higher, because if you eat something like bread and meat together in a same meal, so a highly carbohydrate food with a highly protein meal, it takes a lot for the body to digest it, and that's why, you know, we have a saying, like, everybody cursed its owner for not lying down in order to digest the food. So I'll say it in Croatian. Svako jelo svoga gospodara klelo, što nije lego kako bi se sleglo.
It rhymes in Croatian.
Yeah, in Croatian it rhymes, in English not so.
Yeah.
So basically, like Hippocrates said so many thousands of years ago, let food be thy medicine, let medicine be thy food. Food really can affect our health in a great manner. So if somebody wants to work at an optimum level of energy, they really should take care of what they're eating. So if you want to have a protein meal, so if you want to have something, you know, like chicken or a burger, etc., don't eat it with bread, don't eat it with potatoes, you know, chips, etc. Don't eat it with pasta, eat it with a salad or some steamed vegetables. And then your body will digest it normally, it won't suffer. The reason why, because proteins are digested in an environment that is acidic. So the proteins that, the enzymes that are needed to digest protein, they work best in an acidic milieu. And the ones that are needed to digest carbohydrates, they work best in a base environment. So if you remember from chemistry, base plus acid equals neutral. So if we eat it in the same meal, it takes much longer to digest, because the body is then all the time pumping more enzymes, pumping more chlorine acid, etc. So it takes a longer while. It's just simply faster if you take pasta with or potato with vegetables, and on one meal and another meal you can eat meat or eggs or tofu with salad. And if you keep them apart, you will see that your energy will be higher, you will achieve more, you'll be able to think more, and actually you will even lose excess weight. However, if you have a sweet tooth like I do, it helps to a certain degree. So sugar is another thing that one needs to take care of. We have sugar almost in everything. So ketchup has sugar in it. If you look into mustard, you bet you can also find sugar in that as well.
Salty snacks, loaded with sugar also.
Yeah, so the sugar is put in so many things, in breads. Sugar is put in breads, etc. So our daily intake of sugar is much higher than we even realize. So again, if there's a possibility that we can buy breads and pasta that we know are made without sugar, that are made with natural ingredients, that will improve upon our health. So it's not ingredients by themselves. You know, some people are saying, don't eat that food, don't eat this food. That is only valid if you have hormonal disbalances. Then there are some foods that we know are either beneficial or detrimental if you have a certain hormonal condition or metabolic disorder.
Sure.
But if you don't, if your body functions nicely, then you don't have to eliminate foods. It's better to see what you should include to optimize how your body works. So there are some foods which are universally good, like dry figs. They're really good for the digestive system. They also have a high amount of iron. So these are the things that I would always recommend for people to take care to eat a few of these every day for the better functioning of their body. So green tea. So if you have trouble waking up, so anybody who has issues with their thyroid and have hypothyroidism, they know one of the major issues you have is you feel tired, you feel sleepy, getting up in the morning is hard, concentrating, etc. So if you know these things, then some things like green tea or some other teas that improve memory, etc. help. And it's always best to take them separately, because sometimes you just don't know how they will work together unless there is some either traditional experience, like experience of millennia, like in Chinese traditional medicine or Ayurvedic medicine, or even European traditional medicine, which comes from using herbal plants.
Oh, Hildegard.
Yeah, from Bingania. So that's one example. But every area, even here in Croatia, we have this quite a lot.
The people
Present.
knowledge.
Yeah.
So, you told us a lot about nutrition.
I don't know, it just came out.
A lot about water, but so where does Bodyrecog fit in all this story? It felt like a really good prologue to the main dish. So
yes. So this is all my interest. How does the body function, and what affects the body, and how to keep your health at the highest level. This has been always my main concern. And because of that, I was thinking one of the things in order to be able to determine your genetic archetype or nutrigenomic archetype is you need to measure your body, but basically you cannot measure yourself. You can try, but it's always incorrect, and most people don't know where to measure, how to measure, and so you need actually an expert who will do it for you and measure you. And it also takes a long time. It takes about, if you do all the measurements, well, some measurements 30 minutes. If you do more than that, it takes up to an hour. And if you're overweight or obese, it definitely takes more time. So it is a challenge how to do it, and that's why doctors hardly ever do it. And better fitness centers, they might do only certain things once, maybe twice a year, and then they charge it pretty much. And the next thing is, so once you take all the measurements, then you have to put them into all these formulas to make the analysis whether a person belongs to a certain category for health risk, for cardiovascular diseases, diabetes, metabolic disorders, for cancer, certain types of cancer. And these are all the leading causes of death. 7 out of 10 leading causes of death may be directly linked to obesity or being too heavy for your own good. And also the World Health Organization, that is trying to improve the global health, it has 9 voluntary targets for non-communicable diseases, out of which 38 million people die every year, and 16 million of those are under 70. So it's not old age, it's people die much younger, and you can link out of those 9 targets, 6 can be more or less directly or indirectly related to all this. So one of the things the World Health Organization needs to collect the data is for the National Institutes of Public Health to give them information about the person's height, about the person's weight. They calculate the BMI, and but then they found out, BMI has a lot of restrictions. It's usually age independent, and nowadays people are saying the cutoff values are not the best way to determine somebody's health risk status, because there are so many situations when they're not valid. So then they include the waist circumference, waist to hip ratio, waist to height ratio, the neck circumference, and so there's so many of this data that they would require, and it would help to make national policies for public health. But to gather this data is very tedious, it's time consuming, and this we're just talking about is taking measurements. And so the next step is to do all the analytics. Depending on the number of analytics, it can take from 1 hour to 2 hours, depending how much you want to do and provide the person or your research institution or your academic institution or your health institution, how much you can actually do. It can be just the patient or the client, but you want to be able to have all this data. So then eventually, when you have all this data, you have to transfer this information to somebody. It can be, if it's a case of a fitness trainer, it's their client. If it's the case of a doctor or physician, it can be a cardiologist, a pulmonologist, an oncologist. Then this is information that they would want to share with their patient. And however, if it's a pharmaceutical company that is developing a medication for a heart disease or for cancer, etc., they would like to see the effects on the body. If it's an institute for public health, they would like to monitor what's happening with the health of their population, and also whether the strategies and policies that they are trying to implement, what is their effect, what are their results. And so this is what it means to transfer all that analyzed data. So basically, this is what Bodyrecog does. Bodyrecog monitors personal health by gathering all the data from personal health. We can then analyze all that in real time. National health. Once we have several nations on several continents, we can say we're actually monitoring global health in real time. Okay. So this is the idea behind Bodyrecog. It's a very holistic approach. It goes from top to down, and from up, and from bottom to up. So we're covering both areas. So it's that's why we are not focused just B2C or just B2B, because in order for this to work, it has to be approached from both sides. We need data from the population, and the population benefits, because what we know, in this way they get a sense of self-empowerment, they get a sense of self-monitoring, but also being remotely monitored by their doctor, for instance. They get feedback, they get support by the system, but also by their support group and by the professional who is monitoring them. And the way we have achieved that is by creating a mobile app and a web app which can synchronize together. And the way we want to speed up the measurement process is to use the latest in technology that is photogrammetry over the mobile app with the use of artificial intelligence, which the more the app is used, the more it learns and the more precise it is. That's why in the beginning we now have that it's 95 to 96% accurate, and we want to increase the accuracy level to above 99%. But at this point it's at this level, and the more it is used, the artificial intelligence, so the machine learning, everything is going to make it more and more accurate. And then for the professional version, so that goes with the web app, we're actually doing two things. One is to use the structure sensor, which you put on the iPad, and then you can go around the subject and thus have a 3D avatar and all the measurements extrapolated from that. This solution is neat for areas where you have to go, let's say in the field search. So for somebody who wants to measure a whole class or the whole school and see all the measurements. So that would be, for instance, a PE teacher, physical education teacher, or a fitness trainer who wants to see how their clients are doing, and also, of course, the medical doctors. But we are also developing our own multispectral camera, which should do things even faster and without the need of the person going around the subject, and it would actually give even more information. But I will say no more about that camera because this is still something that is being worked on, and we are doing trying out certain things, etc. And all this, we are working very closely with academia. So we're working very closely with the Laboratory of Kinanthropometry and the Faculty of Kinesiology in order to achieve the scientific validation and verification of the digital measurement itself, but also of all the science behind it. So in our team we have a nutritionist, a clinical dietitian, medical doctor who is an internist, so really specialized in what happens with the body. She's also a university professor, a fellow of the European College of Sports, and so these are the ones that we're working with now, but we have also set agreements in motion to do clinical testing with the Center for Population Health Sciences, which is from the University of Edinburgh, and they're the World Health Organization's collaborating laboratory, and they would lead the clinical testing, but also with the University of Malaya in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. The reason why we chose Malaysia is because Malaysia is a country that can be part of an EU-funded project, and also in Malaysia, at one place you can find Indians, Chinese, and the Malay population. So we have three populations in one place, and also with a clinic in Nigeria to cover the African population, purely African population. And since we will be in Boston, hopefully this is something that is still in the process with Harvard School of Public Health, and this is where we're headed.
So everywhere, basically.
Yeah, it is required so that we can have data from different populations and different ethnicity, different body shapes, body types, and we want to see that it really works for everybody. And once we have this ready, then it can be a great health risk assessment tool. It can be a tool that helps to develop proper programs for dietary and exercise regimes according to existing medical conditions. So this is not supposed to replace professionals, but to make either health professionals or fitness professionals, but to make their jobs easier, to give them more data than they would otherwise have, and also to empower their clients or their patients, so people as such to have greater mastery of their own health. That is what we are doing.
So when you mentioned Malaysia, it reminded me that I read that you are a recipient of an Innovation Award from Malaysia also. I mean, several Innovation Awards. It's all connected to Bodyrecog, or to the creation of Bodyrecog?
Yeah, from Malaysia we got 2 awards. One of them was Honor of Invention, which was actually given by the World International Intellectual Property Association, something like that, and also from their academic level. And then we actually have 11 prestigious Invention Awards from different innovation shows. We got also from the city of Zagreb the award for Dr. Oton Kucera, the award for technical contribution to the city of Zagreb's technical culture in the field of invention. And also the latest, we were declared top 50 most innovative company in the world of sports, and are invited to officially launch in Rio during the Olympic Games. So this is a nice touch. We were very happy to receive this award, and for me, it's nice to receive all those awards, you know, because they are actually proof that people are recognizing what you're doing, what you want to achieve, and where you're going. However, I can hardly wait when it's on the market because I myself want to use it and want to make something that literally every person would want to use, and that every country would use, you know, their institutes for public health in order to monitor the health of their population. Nowadays, people are more overweight and obese than they are undernourished. However, there's also another issue which seems contradictory, and that is that people who are overweight and or obese are actually undernourished. The reason being, they take high-calorie foods, but they're poor in nutrition. And that is something that so many people are nowadays trying to change, to teach the public that it's more important to eat food that is healthy, that is nutritionally rich, than calorie rich. So I really admire Oliver's Jamie Oliver. He is on a mission to teach the UK schools and school children and US schools and school children to improve what they give to the school children, to eat properly and to make healthy choices. And it's funny, people nowadays know that it's healthier to eat an apple than a muffin, but given the choice, you know, like 8 to 9 out of 10 people will take the muffin. Even when you ask them what is the healthier choice, they will say the apple, but they'll grab the muffin.
It is a choice I face every day. There's a bunch of apples waiting for me still.
Actually, apples are really, really good. but you have to really wash them well because most of them are covered with pesticides. That is the bad part. So either you peel off the skin or scrub the surface.
Sure.
And then you're going to have a good apple because they have full of pectines, they're full of
okay with battery?
Okay with battery.
Sorry.
You had me going on the topic. Anyway, apples are really good for you. They're full of fiber. They have also vitamin C, and an apple a day keeps the doctor away is not a saying without some support. It's the wisdom of the ordinary man from centuries ago who didn't have all this modern food to eat, but they knew if they ate an apple a day, they would be healthy. So start your day with that one apple. It will improve your health.
You got, you said 11 international awards for innovation. Do they cover some kind of monetary grants also?
No, they actually cost me.
So the question: how do you fund this great startup, the world-changing, health-changing?
So if you want to be at an invention show, you have to pay the fee. That's why I say it's a cost. But the judges are the ones who decide what kind of award they will give you, or if they will give you an award. So that's one thing. Another thing, for the first 2 years of my startup, I was all the time in the fundraising mode.
Yeah, now we're talking.
No fun being in fundraising mode. Really, it isn't. Instead of working on the product and making something happen and really contributing, because basically that's what you want to do, is to solve a problem that you see that a lot of people have. Because once you gain the weight, it's very, very difficult to lose it. You stand on a scale, you see nothing is happening, although you have been exercising and dieting. And the reason most of the time is because your fat is turning into muscle, and muscle is heavier than fat. So you actually might be getting healthier, not losing weight, but you're healthier. You're losing in centimeters, but you don't know because your scale is not showing the change. And another point is, even if you stand on the scale, your scale does not tell you how much of your body weight is fat and how much of it is muscle. So, and if you don't know that, you might think, all my efforts are in vain, I can't do this, I'm giving up. And we know that 50% of the people who try a dietary or exercise program give up within the first month. 50%. Every second person gives up. So that's why they need support. They need some other data to see their own progress, that they can see that whatever they are doing, that something is happening, it has value. That is the motivation. And so some people are saying, well, that's where BMI is. But BMI doesn't work for athletes because it makes them look falsely overweight or obese. If you are a bodybuilder, your BMI will show you that you are obese.
You mentioned BMI several times, so that's body mass index.
Yes,
but,
which is used nowadays mostly as a factor of the nutritional status of a person, and also as a health risk indicator.
Okay.
However, by itself, it doesn't give sufficient data, and that's why nowadays scientists look for all these other parameters that I have mentioned. So another one is that is very popular today is body fat percentage. But then again, body fat percentage, the way that is taken today, is poor estimate. If you drink water just before you take your body fat percentage, it will show different values than when your bladder is empty. Mm-hmm. So it gives you results which you cannot rely upon. And even if you get a proper value, it still does not tell you how much of your body fat is visceral, meaning inside, around your internal organs, and how much of it is subcutaneous or under skin, because they have very different effects upon your health. If it's subcutaneous, it actually serves as a thermal insulator. So if you're living in a country where the weather is cold, this is actually evolutionary advantage. However, if you have all the fat around your organs, you are at a high risk of developing diabetes or some other cardiometabolic disease. So there is something that is called FOTI and TOFI types. So FOTI means fat outside, thin inside. Fat outside means that you have a lot of subcutaneous fat. So it's for those people who are working heavily and are living maybe in Alaska, but they're the ones who are moving the logs, etc. So the
sure.
The lumberjacks. For them, they're the good example of the FOTI type, fat outside, thin inside. And then you can have somebody who looks like a model. They look very thin outside, but they're fat inside, and you cannot discern this just from the body, because they seem to be thin. And this is something what we are trying to show that, and to help people understand that the internal fat is the one that is dangerous, not the subcutaneous one. And that's why where the body fat is distributed is important, and this we can actually discern by measuring the body and seeing where is it accumulated. And that's why we have this digital measurement that does that automatically instead of measuring somebody, etc. And this is also a good way that we can determine somebody's hormonal type or metabolic type if they're at risk.
Now I'm afraid to download the Bodyrecog.
No, it's always good to know, because if you are at risk, you can do something. Prevention is the key today, and nowadays every government wants to have preventative medicine policies implemented.
Because it's cheaper, basically, than
to cure. Another thing.
Overweight population. Yeah,
yes.
Makes sense.
And it reflects and overspills and lower productivity, more sick days, more sick leave. Also, people who are obese, they have problems fitting into normal chairs, into well, come on, even a regular person has a hard time fitting into certain airplane seats, let alone somebody who is obese, because they're so narrow. They were made for people how they were in the 50s of the last century. They're not taking into consideration that people are now wider.
Still.
Yeah, and so all these kinds of things. And so you asked, how do we get funded? So in the beginning, a little bit bootstrapping from my friends, from my own royalties from the books that I wrote. Then I got some small grants from the city of Zagreb, from other national institutions. So that all kept, you going afloat,
yeah,
but not really moving forward. but I was persistent, and I made all these deals, even though I was the only one officially working at the startup. My brother was helping me out. I had quite a few friends helping out a little bit here or there, and like that. So things were moving forward, but not at the speed that I would have liked. And so with one of my mentors from a pitching event where I presented, I kept him informed of what was going on and etc. So at one point he asked, he told me the first time we met, because he asked me how much would I need to do what I wanted to do, and I said 100,000 euros or $120,000, and he said, okay, I'll give you 50 if you come up with the other 50, if you find somebody else for the other 50. And I couldn't find somebody else for the other 50 at all. I had hoped that, you know, I would get a state grant or something like that. Didn't happen. They have a very weird pointing system.
Distributing points for different projects that apply for the grants.
Yeah. The system, how they allocate the points is really ridiculous. So, because I'm a female founder, I get 2 points. Because I'm a beginner, I get 2 points. But then, because I don't have experience as an entrepreneur, they take away 12 points.
Wow.
And you know, and even though I warned them that this doesn't make sense, they're just fooling people, next year they repeated the whole thing the same way. They didn't make any changes. So that is government, you know, what can you do? Bureaucracy. And then so the mentor, when I told him, okay, at least to do the freemium, so the basic version, I would need 25,000 euros. I said, okay, I think I'll do that privately, I will invest. So he decided to privately invest, not as a venture capitalist, but privately. And I said, can I have 30? Well, if it would mean a difference to that, I said, yes. And so that was the first larger investment. And that helped to go to CES in Vegas this year, and then from then on everything just started opening up. I found some new technological partners, those people who saw me at CES and spoke with me. They were the ones who also talked about competing for the top 50 most innovative in the world of sports. We spoke, etc. And when they heard what we were doing, they said, definitely you belong to the top 50. And that's how it all went. And then we got a new investment, and now we're expecting a third one. And so it's
the ball is rolling.
And then at the end of the year we're going for Series A, and so that's why we have opened the company in the US, because unfortunately no investor wants to have shares of a Croatian-based company.
Yeah, same old.
The reasons are is a lot of unknowns. Unknown legal system, unknown tax system, and they're not even aware of the reputation so much, but it's a lot of unknowns, and they don't feel familiar with it, and they just, it's easier for them to invest somewhere where everything is
known to them,
known and doesn't change so often. In Croatia, with every government, the legal system changes, the tax system changes, and investors don't like that. They prefer that they know what they're going into, if they invest this much money, how much they can expect that will go for taxes, how much will go for this and that. They like to know things up front. Sure. And there are too many unknown variables, and that is the main reason. One of the reasons when I was invited by the European Commission for the SME Assembly was that several of us brought up this issue that what we would need is to have a system of having European or EU-based companies and not so that it would be the same for the investor whether we are located in Zagreb or in London or in Latvia or in Poland or wherever, that it wouldn't matter because everybody would be EU-based. But then they said, yes, we do realize that quite a few people have been asking for this. Entrepreneurs are constantly asking for this because it would make sense. But the governments themselves are still having a hard time to decide to change their tax policies, their fiscal policies, etc. Because everybody would have to have the same. In order for an EU-based company to work, every country in the European Union would have to have the same tax system, fiscal system, probably even legal system when it comes to entrepreneurial or the business world. And this is something that they're not ready to do yet.
It seems easier for European startups to just incorporate in London or in Delaware.
Exactly.
Because most of the investors are familiar with the legal system in those places.
Yes, and that's why we went. I had hoped, okay, let's open a company in the UK, because in some ways UK is actually more advanced than US, believe it or not, in the sense that they had the crowd investing platforms really up and running, and anybody in the UK could invest into a startup and get shares for that. In the US, it's just now, recently, since May 16th, that this is valid.
It's a part of Jobs Act.
Yeah, Jobs Act 3. So, and that's the reason why we opened the company in London. And it was great opening the company in London. It was so super easy. It cost only £17. 15 pounds went to the government, £2 to this online service. Within 2 hours, they did everything. I had a company in the UK. And I said, wow, it's so nice and easy, you know, to work with the UK. It's great. And then, of course, if you want to go for a crowd investing platform, you need a bank account. And then that turned out to be a hurdle that I did not expect. You can't get a bank account because you don't have credit history in UK. And we told them, you don't have to give us credit. We don't need to go, you know, in the minus, etc. We just need a place where we can receive money, you know, from crowd investing.
Sure.
No, it didn't work. So I had to give all my shares to my co-director, who is a UK citizen, who has UK credit history. And that's how we did to open the bank account. But this whole situation with all that, so I asked my mentor and my largest investor, to be quite honest, is this same situation in the US? He said, no, it's super easy. They want you to open an account in the US. They're making it everything easy for the entrepreneur to do business. And that's why we now have registered the company in Delaware, of course. But we're having offices in Boston because Boston is the digital health globally hub for the world. So anybody who wants to do anything in digital health or health tech goes there, and investors go there as well. And Harvard is there, MIT is there. I think Massachusetts has the most universities per capita as a state within the US. So at this small place, you have a lot of brain power, and this is where I feel would be best for me and my company to be. in order to achieve the most.
That makes sense. From what you explained, it sounds pretty scientific.
Yes.
Are you good? Good.
Battery still running.
So, what are the next steps? Not the classified ones, but the ones you can tell us about. How do you see Bodyrecog proceeding in the next few years or even longer?
So our goal is to create modules. So this is the first one is the health risk assessment module. Then special modules for the fitness world, for the nutrition world, for sport-specific modules. So like for bodybuilders, for swimmers, soccer players, basketball players, etc. But also more on the scientific side, so a medical side to be more precise, in order to track pregnancies, high-risk pregnancies especially, to determine genetic syndromes. Sometimes it happens that people don't realize that somebody in their environment, or somebody close and near and dear, might have a genetic syndrome. They just say, oh, they're a little bit slow, but actually if they were early on diagnosed, then proper treatment could have been administered. And sometimes the therapy doesn't consist of genetic therapy, even though it could be, especially if it's very, very early on. But if you know that certain environments are more conducive to help them achieve the most what they can, and certain environments are detrimental, then this is something that can be worked on. So we want to create further more modules, and also to work on to input more data when it comes to gender, age, ethnicity. So gradually, as time passes, Bodyrecog should be more informative, more precise, more analytical, and more useful to everybody. Not just scientists, not just doctors, but to regular people like you and me, to health-conscious individuals, but also to maybe somebody who is a patient and then they want to see if the medication or the therapy is helping them, and what kind of effect that therapy is having. But sometimes people have, very complicated conditions, and they are having several medications at the same time, undergoing different therapies, and sometimes it's hard to determine what is, if the situation is worsening, what is actually affecting them. So all this data from all these people eventually can lead to more knowledge, which will be for the betterment of humankind. Because if we know what works better for specific populations, we can, for those specific populations, we can provide better dietary programs, exercise programs, medication, therapy, advice, prevention advice, all that.
So, health in an app, basically.
Yes. That's why I said monitoring personal health, national health, and global health in real time.
That's definitely an impressive set of goals you have, and I really hope you can achieve that.
Well, with the support of good people, good investors, good partners, people who share the same goals, everything is possible.
Okay, now if you want to add anything, I would like to ask if there's a question in the audience about anything. No? Oh.
I gave them too much information. Now their brains are overloaded and they need time to digest information that was given. And after that, they might have questions.
No, but it's...
That's how the human brain works.
Typical creation audience. Doesn't matter what is the size of the audience. What matters is nobody wants to ask questions ever.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
You said you have offices in Boston, right? Do you have them in London as well, or you don't need the offices in London?
So the offices right now over there are in the private home in London, and at my mentor's business address in Boston, because we are physically not there. And my CTO, who is actually from Boston, he's now working from home, but we do intend to have a proper office once it makes sense. It doesn't make sense to spend money if you have one person who is employed there, and the most people are actually employed in Zagreb, so there are 6 who are regularly employed, and then there we have some really good interns, and some outer associates who are working with us, and all those scientific partners that I spoke of. And I forgot to mention that we actually have 6 technological partners, 3 here in Zagreb, 1 in the US, 1 in Germany, 1 in India. So coordinating them is sometimes a real challenge because of the different time zones. So the CTO is in Boston, so he makes a call and arranges to speak with Zagreb and with India. And so it's, like I said, it's fun and challenging, but it's fun. It's a fun challenge. It's not a challenge that makes you, tired of life, but it's okay. This is something that we're dealing with, but we're actually looking forward to all that.
So a happy startup challenge.
Yes, fun. We're having fun.
So do you have any final thoughts or suggestions to not just to the audience but to anyone watching the video?
Okay, what I always tell people, if you have a good idea and you think you can make it happen, don't think you can do it, and don't give up until you do, no matter what anybody tells you. I have had the experience of pitching and all those pitch competitions, and I have heard different people telling me different things. Many times those opinions and comments were totally opposite of each other, contradictory. And in the end, you are the one who has the vision. You are the one who is going to do the work. So you're the one who has to decide what has to be done. And pivot only when you see that it's really and absolutely necessary to pivot. Until you have tried out all the options, there's no need for pivoting. Pivot only to the extent that you need. What I have learned over this time is to change my rhetoric depending on the audience. In the beginning, everybody was telling me, you're too scientific, too scientific, too scientific. Then I made it very simple, and then it seemed to me that when I was speaking with people, then they wouldn't get the whole idea because it was pretty simplified. And because they didn't get the whole idea and all the impact it had, they were not supporting it. So in the end, learn to be yourself. And one thing, learn how to do an investor pitch, not a product pitch, because we were being taught a product pitch, including in the Founder Institute. Everybody was teaching us how to do the product pitch, but actually investors want to learn, okay, that's fine, the problem, the solution, that's the team, that's fine, that's all fine, but I would actually want to see how do you plan to earn? How do you plan to make money? Where is the money? And if you learn how to say that in the way, in their jargon, it's something one has to learn, then you will get funded. So this is something I would always suggest: find a mentor in the financial world who will prepare you how to speak with investors. Because if you don't know how to speak with them, they will not invest into you, because basically it's just you're speaking and going this way, and they're speaking and you're going this way, and you're just going to pass each other like two ships in the night. And that's not what you want to do. You want to have them speaking to you, listening to you, and supporting you.
Well, it is pretty awesome. Thank you for taking the time to come here today and to share your experience and your cumulative wisdom and knowledge about nutrition. So eat an apple. Don't forget to eat an apple. Well, thank you, and thank you everybody for coming here today.